What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, something inside you is changing? Not because you're evil, not because you want it to, but because the world is built to break you, slowly, invisibly, without you even realizing it. The people who swore they'd never lose themselves. They were the first to fall. History proves this over and over again. You think you're in control, that your morals are unshakable, that you would never cross the line. But what if I told you that's exactly what they all thought too? Psychologists have uncovered a terrifying truth, one that explains why good people do the unthinkable. And the worst part? It's already working on you. Stay with me, because the second you think you're safe, you've already lost. Take a deep breath. Now ask yourself, could you ever commit evil? Your gut reaction is probably no. You see yourself as a good person, moral, kind, incapable of harming others. But what if I told you that under the right circumstances, you absolutely could? Not because you're a bad person, not because you want to, but because science has proven that almost anyone can be pushed to commit horrifying acts. Let me tell you something that will haunt you. In 1971, Dr. Philip Zimbardo conducted a psychology experiment at Stanford University. He took normal, stable college students and randomly assigned them to be either guards or prisoners in a fake prison. No one was forced to do anything. No one was told to be cruel. And yet, within days, these ordinary kids transformed into something terrifying. The guards became sadistic, ruthless. They forced prisoners to do pointless exercises for hours. They took away their beds, locked them in solitary confinement. They started enjoying their power. The prisoners, they became broken, numb, obedient. The abuse was so severe that the experiment had to be shut down early. Think about that. These were normal, everyday people, just like you. And all it took was a shift in circumstances to turn them into monsters. Still think you're different? So did they. But here's the terrifying part. This same psychological force is at work in your life right now. You just haven't noticed it yet. You might be thinking, that would never happen to me. I know who I am. My morals are too strong. That's exactly what those students thought too. But here's the truth. Your personality doesn't matter as much as you think. The situation is stronger than the individual. History has proven this time and time again. Ordinary citizens supported dictators. Loving parents became ruthless executioners. Soldiers who swore to protect turned into war criminals. These weren't psychopaths. They weren't born evil. They were just like you until the right conditions rewired their minds. The scariest part, it happens so gradually you don't even notice. First you justify something small, a little cruelty, a tiny lie, a harmless act of selfishness. Then you do it again and again. Each time your brain adjusts, your conscience dulls, your morality shifts. One day, you wake up and realize you've become the very thing you once feared, and the process has already begun. Evil doesn't come from monsters in the shadows. It comes from ordinary people making small, seemingly harmless compromises. Take the people who committed horrific crimes. They weren't demons. They were teachers, doctors, shopkeepers, and loving parents. They started by following minor rules, obeying small injustices, looking the other way. By the time they realized what they were a part of, it was too late. Because evil isn't a single dramatic decision. It's a slippery slope, a series of tiny steps. And right now, you're already on it. Think about it. Have you ever seen something wrong but stayed silent? Have you ever justified a small lie because it wasn't a big deal? Have you ever done something you swore you'd never do but told yourself you had no choice? That's how it starts. One day you tell yourself, it's not my problem. The next day you say, I have to do this to survive. And before you know it, you're not the hero of the story anymore. You're part of the system. The only way to escape? Recognize the trap before it swallows you. There's a reason why history repeats itself. because humans keep making the same mistake. It's called the Faustian bargain, a deal where you get everything you've ever wanted at a cost you don't realize until it's too late. You might think this is just a legend, a fictional tale of a man named Faust who sold his soul to the devil for unlimited knowledge, success, and pleasure. But what if I told you this isn't just an old myth? It's happening every single day, not with demons and contracts signed in blood, but with small, invisible compromises that turn good people into something unrecognizable. Take a look at history. CEOs who start out just wanting to build a company until money becomes their god, and they'll crush anyone to get more. Politicians who enter the system to make a difference until they're selling their morals for power behind closed doors. Doctors, teachers, police officers who begin with good intentions but slowly start turning a blind eye because it's easier that way. Do you see what's happening? No one wakes up and says, "Today I will become corrupt." It never happens in one big, dramatic moment. It happens slowly, step by step. At first it seems harmless, a little compromise, a tiny, ethical gray area. Maybe it's bending the truth to make a sale. Maybe it's staying quiet about something you know is wrong. And you tell yourself, just this once. But that's how the trap works. Because once you justify something once, you can justify it again and again. Until one day, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. And just like that, you've signed the deal. Not with a demon, but with your own silence, with your own willingness to look the other way. The scariest part? You won't even realize you've lost yourself until it's too late. But if you're listening right now, there's still time to stop it. The question is, will you? Let's look at a real example. A new employee notices others taking office supplies home. At first, they feel uncomfortable about it, but after seeing it happen repeatedly, they start to think it's normal. One day, they take a pen home. Nothing bad happens. Later, they take some paper, then maybe a stapler. Each time, their brain justifies it. The company won't miss it, or I work hard, so I deserve this. This slope gets more slippery because of how our minds work. We have an amazing ability to justify our actions. After each small wrong choice, we slightly adjust our beliefs to match what we did. We tell ourselves stories that make our actions seem okay. I had to do it. It wasn't that bad. Others are doing worse things. Social pressure makes the slope even more dangerous. When we see others sliding down, it becomes easier to follow. We might think, if good people like Sarah and John are doing it, it can't be that wrong. Or we might fear standing out by being the only one who refuses to participate. The scary part is that people rarely notice how far they've moved from their original values. Like a frog in slowly heating water, the changes happen so gradually that each step feels like a natural progression from the last. By the time someone realizes how far they've gone, they might be in deep. But knowing about this pattern gives us power to fight it. We can catch ourselves at the top of the slope where the small choices begin. We can question those early justifications. Am I making excuses for something I know isn't right? Would I be proud to tell others about this decision? The best defense is drawing clear lines early and sticking to them. Instead of asking, is this really so bad? Ask, is this moving me in the direction I want to go? Small choices matter because they set the direction for bigger ones later. Being aware of this pattern helps in everyday situations. When you notice yourself making excuses for small ethical shortcuts, that's a warning sign. When you see others normalizing questionable behavior, that's another red flag. These are moments to pause and think about where that path might lead. Breaking free from the slope means being willing to feel uncomfortable. It means speaking up when others stay quiet. It means doing the right thing even when it costs something. Most importantly, it means paying attention to those small choices that don't seem important at the time. The good news is that this same principle works in reverse. Just as small, bad choices can lead down, small, good choices can lead up. Each time we choose to do the right thing, even in tiny ways, we make the next good choice a little easier. We build habits that protect us from sliding down that slope. Standing firm against small wrongs takes courage. It might mean being the only one who speaks up in a meeting, or refusing to join in when others are cutting corners. But these moments of resistance are what keep us from sliding down that dangerous slope. The path to evil isn't about big dramatic choices. It's about the small ones we make every day. By watching these choices carefully and understanding how they add up, we can stop ourselves from sliding down that slope and help others do the same. The shadow self lives in all of us. Those parts we'd rather not see or admit exist. Carl Jung saw this hidden side as more than just our negative traits. It contains both light and dark, holding pieces of ourselves we've pushed away. Think of your shadow as a backpack filled with traits you decided weren't acceptable. Maybe as a child you learned that anger wasn't okay, so you stuffed it away. Or perhaps being too confident got you in trouble, so you buried that part too. But these traits don't disappear. They stay with us, influencing our actions from behind the scenes. What makes the shadow tricky is that we often can't see it in ourselves. Instead, we spot these traits in others and react strongly. If someone's behavior makes you unusually angry or uncomfortable, you might be seeing your own shadow reflected back at you. That person who brags too much? They might trigger you because you've denied your own need for recognition. The shadow grows stronger in the dark. The more we ignore it, the more it controls us without our awareness. People who think they're purely good often end up doing terrible things because they won't look at their darker impulses. They project all evil onto others while staying blind to their own capacity for wrongdoing. But running from the shadow doesn't work. Jung believed we need to face it directly. This means looking honestly at our flaws, admitting our less pleasant thoughts, and accepting that we contain both good and bad. It's about bringing the shadow into the light where we can see it clearly. This doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. Instead, it's about awareness. When you feel jealous, angry, or greedy, don't pretend those feelings don't exist. Notice them. Ask yourself what they're trying to tell you. Often, shadow traits are just normal human needs that get twisted by being denied. Integration is the goal, making peace with all parts of yourself. Your anger might transform into healthy boundaries. Your vanity might become authentic self-expression. Your greed might reveal where you need more security. The shadow holds gifts if we're brave enough to unwrap them. Working with the shadow takes time and courage. Start small. Next time you judge someone harshly, pause and ask, what about their behavior bothers me so much? Do I ever do something similar? Notice when you're acting unlike yourself, especially if you later feel ashamed. These are clues pointing to shadow material. Write down your thoughts without censoring them. What traits do you hate in others? What parts of yourself do you try to hide? What would people never guess about you? The answers might make you uncomfortable. That's normal. You're shining light into places that haven't seen it for a long time. Talk to trusted friends about your discoveries. Often they can see our blind spots better than we can. Be curious about their feedback rather than defensive. Remember, everyone has a shadow. Exploring yours doesn't make you bad, it makes you human. Pay attention to your dreams. The shadow often shows up there as dark figures, monsters, or people you strongly dislike. Instead of dismissing these images, get curious about what they represent. They're messages from parts of yourself asking to be seen. The reward for this work is freedom. When you stop running from your shadow, you have more energy for life. You understand yourself better. Your relationships improve because you're more honest. You make better choices because you're not acting from hidden motivations. This doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming whole. The goal isn't to eliminate the shadow, but to know it well enough that it no longer controls you from the unconscious. You learn to use its energy constructively rather than having it leak out in harmful ways. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's more like a misunderstood part of yourself that needs attention. By turning toward it with compassion rather than fear, you begin the process of healing old wounds and reclaiming lost parts of yourself. This is how we grow into more complete human beings. Remember that this work is ongoing. The shadow shifts and changes as we do. New challenges bring up new material to examine. But each time we face these parts of ourselves, we get stronger. We build trust in our ability to handle whatever emerges from the depths of our psyche. The concept of moral disengagement builds directly from our discussion of the shadow self. While Jung showed us how we hide parts of ourselves, moral disengagement explains how normal people can do harmful things while still seeing themselves as good. Think about times you've done something you knew wasn't right, but found ways to explain it away. Maybe you took office supplies home telling yourself, everyone does it, or the company can afford it. That's moral disengagement at work. Dr. Albert Bandura identified 8 ways we mentally separate ourselves from the ethical weight of our actions. Let's break them down with real examples. First is moral justification, making bad actions sound honorable. A manager might fire someone right before retirement to help the company stay competitive. The harmful act gets wrapped in noble-sounding language. Next comes euphemistic labeling, where we use soft words to make harsh actions seem better. Instead of "I lied to them," we say, "I bent the truth." Instead of "I stole," we say, "I borrowed indefinitely." The third method is advantageous comparison. We minimize our bad behavior by comparing it to worse examples. Sure, I spread office gossip, but at least I'm not stealing like Steve in accounting. Fourth is displacement of responsibility. We push the blame onto authority figures or circumstances. I was just following orders, or I had no choice. That's just how things work here. Diffusion of responsibility comes fifth. This happens when we spread blame across a group so no one feels personally responsible. Think of a team making unethical decisions where everyone thinks it wasn't really my call. The sixth way is disregarding consequences. We downplay or ignore the harm we cause. Someone might say, it's just a few dollars, when expense report padding adds up to thousands across an organization. Dehumanization is the seventh method. We strip away the human qualities of those we harm, making it easier to hurt them. This shows up when people refer to others as numbers, cases, or resources instead of people. The final technique is attribution of blame. We convince ourselves the victims deserved what happened. If they didn't want trouble, they shouldn't have complained. These mental tricks work together. Take a manager who fires an older employee unfairly. They might justify it as needed for company success, use corporate buzzwords instead of direct language, compare it to worse layoffs elsewhere. Blame policy requirements. Share responsibility with HR. Ignore the personal impact. See the employee as just a number and claim poor performance made it necessary. This matters because moral disengagement doesn't just explain past wrongs, it predicts future ones. The more someone uses these techniques, the easier unethical choices become. Small compromises grow into bigger ones. But awareness gives us power. By spotting these patterns in ourselves and others, we can catch moral disengagement before it leads to harm. When you notice yourself using these mental tricks, pause and question your real motivations. The next time you face an ethical choice, watch for these 8 patterns. Are you trying to make something wrong sound right? using soft words to hide harsh actions. Comparing to worse examples, shifting blame, spreading responsibility, ignoring harm, dehumanizing others, blaming victims. Recognizing moral disengagement helps us stay honest with ourselves. We all face pressure to compromise our values, but by understanding how we justify wrong actions, we can make better choices. This connects directly to our next topic, on dark leadership. The same patterns that let ordinary people do harmful things can concentrate on leaders, creating toxic environments that spread moral disengagement through entire organizations. Dark leadership exists in many forms around us, from toxic bosses to manipulative politicians. These leaders use specific techniques to maintain control and achieve their goals, often at the expense of others. By studying how dark leaders operate, we can better protect ourselves and our communities from their influence. Dark leaders typically show several key traits. They often display narcissistic behavior, putting their interests above everyone else's. They lack empathy for others and view people as tools to be used rather than human beings deserving respect. They frequently use fear and intimidation to control their subordinates. These leaders create environments where questioning authority becomes dangerous. They isolate critics, reward blind loyalty, and punish those who speak up against them. They build systems that make resistance difficult by breaking down social bonds between people who might otherwise unite against them. One common tactic is gaslighting, making others question their own judgment and reality. A dark leader might deny saying something despite clear evidence, or blame others for problems they created. This creates confusion and self-doubt in their targets. Another method is strategic kindness, showing occasional warmth or generosity to keep people hoping things will improve. This creates emotional dependency and makes it harder for people to leave toxic situations. Kindness is always conditional on obedience. Dark leaders often use false narratives to justify their actions. They position themselves as protectors against imagined threats, or claim their harsh methods are necessary for some greater good. They rewrite history to paint themselves as heroes rather than oppressors. They excel at identifying people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Someone who fears job loss becomes easier to control through economic threats. Someone who craves approval becomes manipulated through selective praise and criticism. Dark leaders study their targets carefully to find these pressure points. Information control is another key strategy. Dark leaders restrict access to outside perspectives and create echo chambers that reinforce their authority. They discredit independent sources of information and position themselves as the only reliable voice of truth. They build loyalty through artificial scarcity and competition. By limiting resources and opportunities, they force people to compete for their favor. This prevents unified resistance and keeps everyone focused on individual survival rather than collective well-being. Dark leaders often create impossible standards that keep others in a constant state of anxiety and inadequacy. No matter how hard someone works, it's never quite enough. This maintains dependence on the leader's approval and prevents people from developing genuine confidence. They use public humiliation and example making to enforce compliance. When someone steps out of line, they face harsh consequences designed to warn others against similar misbehavior. This creates a climate of fear where people police themselves and each other. Understanding these tactics helps us recognize them in action. Dark leadership relies heavily on isolation, keeping targets separated from support systems that might help them resist or escape. Building strong communities and maintaining outside connections provides crucial protection. Dark leaders also depend on secrecy and shame to maintain control. Bringing their actions into the light through documentation and public exposure helps break their power. Speaking up about abuse, while often difficult, helps others recognize they aren't alone. Recognizing our own vulnerabilities to manipulation is important. Dark leaders look for people who lack strong boundaries or have unmet emotional needs they can exploit. Working on personal growth and emotional health makes us less susceptible to their influence. They count on people's tendency to normalize gradually worsening conditions. Like the frog in slowly heating water, we often adapt to toxic situations instead of escaping them. Regular reality checks with trusted outsiders help maintain perspective on what's acceptable. Financial independence provides important protection against dark leaders who use economic control. Having savings and marketable skills makes it easier to walk away from toxic situations rather than being trapped by necessity. Building strong ethical frameworks and values before encountering dark leaders helps resist their influence. They often target people during vulnerable transitions or crises when their normal judgment is impaired. Clear personal principles provide crucial guidance in difficult times. Dark leadership persists because it can be effective at achieving certain goals, even if the human cost is severe. Understanding how it works helps us resist its influence and create healthier alternatives based on genuine respect and shared well-being, rather than domination and control. Evil often presents itself in subtle ways, making it hard to spot and resist. But we can build practical habits that help us stay on track and avoid harmful choices. Let's look at some concrete steps we can take. First, we need to recognize evil's basic patterns. It usually starts small, a minor lie, a small act of selfishness, or ignoring someone in need. These little choices might seem harmless, but they can grow into bigger problems. Evil tends to isolate us from others and make us focus only on ourselves. One effective strategy is to practice regular self-reflection. Take time each day to review your actions and choices. Ask yourself, did I help or hurt others today? Was I honest in my dealings? Did I give in to selfish impulses? This helps catch negative patterns early. Building strong connections with good people is another key defense. When we surround ourselves with ethical, caring individuals, their example guides us and their presence supports us. They can point out when we're starting to drift in the wrong direction. Creating clear personal rules is very useful. Write down your core values and the lines you won't cross. For example, I won't lie to get ahead, or I'll speak up when I see bullying. Having these written standards makes it easier to resist temptation in tough moments. Physical health plays a big role too. When we're tired, hungry, or stressed, our willpower weakens. Regular sleep, exercise, and healthy food help us stay mentally strong and make better choices. Taking care of our body helps protect our character. We should also limit exposure to negative influences. The media we consume and the online spaces we visit can slowly shape our thinking. Choose uplifting content and communities that encourage good behavior. Step away from places that promote cruelty or selfishness. Learning to say no is a critical skill. Evil often comes disguised as opportunity or efficiency. Someone might suggest cutting corners to save money or excluding others for convenience. Practice refusing these compromises, even when they seem small. Developing empathy through active practice helps a lot. Try to really see things from other people's views. Think about how your choices affect others, including people you don't know directly. This wider perspective makes it harder to rationalize harmful actions. When you make mistakes, and everyone does, own up to them quickly. Hiding errors or blaming others leads down a dark path. Being honest about our faults helps us learn and grow stronger. Keep track of your progress. Notice when you successfully resist temptation or make ethical choices under pressure. These victories build confidence and show that resisting evil is possible. Build support systems before you need them. Have friends you can call when facing tough choices. Create backup plans for difficult situations. Know who to ask for advice when you're unsure about the right path. Stay alert for rationalization. the way we make excuses for bad behavior. Common ones include, everyone else does it, or it's just this once, or no one will know. Learn to spot these thoughts and challenge them. Focus on building good habits rather than just avoiding bad ones. Look for ways to actively help others. Start small. Hold doors, give sincere compliments, share resources. These positive actions strengthen our resistance to negative influences. Money and status often test our principles. Decide ahead of time what you won't do for gain. Having clear limits helps when facing real pressure to compromise. Practice forgiveness, but maintain boundaries. When others act badly, we can forgive without letting them continue harmful behavior. This balance keeps us from becoming bitter while protecting ourselves and others. Remember that resistance gets stronger with practice. Each time you choose good over evil, even in small ways, you build moral strength. These daily choices shape who you become over time. Look for role models who demonstrate strong, ethical behavior under pressure. Study how they handle difficult situations. Learn from their strategies and mistakes. Stay connected to your deeper motivations. Why do you want to resist evil? What kind of person do you want to be? Keep these answers clear in your mind. These strategies work best when used together as part of daily life. No single method is perfect, but combining several approaches creates strong protection against negative influences. The brain makes moral decisions through specific neural pathways that light up when we face ethical choices. Scientists have found that both emotion and reason work together in these moments. It's not just cold logic or pure feeling, but a mix of both. Think about the last time you found a wallet on the street. Your first emotional response might be excitement about finding money. But then your brain's prefrontal cortex kicks in, helping you think through the consequences and consider the person who lost it. This mental back and forth happens in milliseconds. Research shows that people who make good moral choices often have stronger connections between the emotional and rational parts of their brains. They can better balance their immediate wants with their values and the effects on others. But here's what's fascinating. These neural pathways get stronger with use, like muscles. Each time you make an ethical choice, you're building up your brain's moral decision-making ability. Bad choices can weaken these pathways, making future good choices harder. Studies of people in high-stress situations reveal something surprising. Those who stick to their values under pressure often report feeling time slow down. Their brains give them an extra moment to think, creating a gap between impulse and action. This mental space is where our true freedom to choose lives. Brain scans show that practicing mindfulness and meditation can strengthen the areas involved in moral choice. These practices help us step back from immediate reactions and make decisions that match our deeper values. Science tells us that moral choices aren't set in stone by our genes or early life. Our brains stay flexible throughout our lives. We can build new neural pathways and strengthen existing ones that support ethical behavior. Social connections play a big role too. When we see others make good choices, our mirror neurons fire up. We literally rehearse those same actions in our minds, making it easier to follow through when we face similar situations. But there's a catch. Our brains are wired to take shortcuts. These mental shortcuts helped our ancestors survive, but they can lead us astray in moral decisions. Being aware of these biases is the first step to overcoming them. For example, we tend to be more ethical toward people we see as similar to us. Our brains process their pain more deeply. But we can expand this circle of care by actively practicing empathy for those who seem different. Stress and fatigue can weaken our moral decision-making. When we're tired or overwhelmed, the brain falls back on automatic responses rather than careful ethical thinking. That's why rest and self-care matter for making good choices. The good news is that moral skills can be trained. Just like learning a new language or instrument, regular practice builds stronger neural networks. Each small choice shapes our brain's architecture. Research on children shows that talking through moral decisions helps build these mental pathways early. But even adults can strengthen their ethical decision-making through discussion and reflection. Some studies suggest that writing down our values makes us more likely to act on them later. The physical act of writing creates stronger memory traces in the brain, which we can access when facing tough choices. Time pressure often leads to poorer moral choices. When we feel rushed, we bypass the brain regions involved in ethical thinking. Creating small pauses in our day can help us make better decisions. The brain's reward system plays a role too. Doing the right thing activates pleasure centers, but these signals can be overshadowed by immediate rewards from unethical choices. Building up positive associations with good choices helps counter this. Scientists have found that imagining future consequences strengthens moral decision-making. When we vividly picture the results of our choices, we're more likely to act ethically. This matches what we see in brain scans. Moral choices involve areas linked to future planning. The more we exercise these mental muscles, the better we become at making choices that serve both ourselves and others. The research is clear. We can train our brains to make better moral choices. It takes practice and patience, but the capacity for growth is built into our biology. Every time we choose right over wrong, we're not just making one good decision. We're building our capacity to make many more. Life gives us choices every day. Big ones, small ones. They add up to shape who we become. Think about the last choice you made. Maybe it was what to eat for breakfast, or whether to take a different route to work. These simple decisions might seem random, but they create ripples that touch your life, and others' lives too. Some people say we don't really have free will, that our choices are just the result of our genes, our upbringing, and random chance. But that view misses something important. Even if outside factors influence us, we still make real decisions. We can pause, think, and pick between different options. Let's break this down with a clear example. Picture yourself at a coffee shop. Someone drops their wallet, and no one else notices. You could easily keep it. Who would know? Or you could chase after them to return it. In that moment, you have real power. Your past experiences might push you one way or another, but the final choice is yours. This matters because once we accept that we can choose, we start taking more responsibility for our actions. We stop blaming everything on circumstances or other people. We begin to see ourselves as active players in our own story, not just passive observers. But having choice brings challenges too. Making decisions can be hard work. Sometimes we freeze up when faced with too many options. Other times we rush into choices without thinking them through. The key is finding balance, taking time to consider our options without getting stuck in endless analysis. Your brain processes about 35,000 decisions each day. Most are small and automatic, like whether to scratch an itch. But some decisions need more attention. These are the ones that test our values and show what we're made of. Good decision-making is like building a muscle. It gets stronger with practice. Start by being more aware of your daily choices. Notice what influences them. Are you choosing based on fear, habit, what others might think? Or are you choosing based on your own values? Values matter because they give direction to our choices. If you value honesty, that makes the wallet decision easier. If you value learning, that helps you pick between watching TV or reading a book. Clear values lead to clearer choices. But here's something people often miss. Not choosing is also a choice. When we avoid decisions or let others decide for us, we're still making a choice. We're choosing to give away our power. Every time you say, "I had no choice." Check if that's really true. Making better choices starts with small steps. First, slow down. Quick decisions aren't always bad, but big choices deserve time and thought. Second, get clear on your values. What really matters to you? Third, gather good information, but don't get paralyzed waiting for perfect information. Perfect certainty rarely comes. Your choices build momentum. Good choices tend to lead to more good choices. Bad choices can start a downward spiral. But here's the good news. You can change direction at any time. Each moment brings new chances to choose differently. Some people worry that focusing too much on choices creates stress. Won't we second-guess everything? The answer is no. Being aware of our choices brings freedom, not anxiety. It helps us live more intentionally instead of running on autopilot. Think about the choices ahead of you right now. Some will be clear, others tricky. You might face pressure from others or feel pulled in different directions. Remember, you have the power to choose your response to any situation. That power might be limited by circumstances, but it's never zero. Your choices tell your story. They show what you believe in and what you stand for. They affect not just you, but everyone around you. Small choices add up over time to create big changes in your life and in the world. So take your power seriously. Make choices with care, but don't let fear of choosing wrong paralyze you. Learn from your mistakes instead of beating yourself up about them. Trust yourself more. Your ability to choose is a gift. Use it wisely. If this video shook you, even just a little, I need to hear from you. Drop a "not me" in the comments right now to prove that you see the trap and that you refuse to fall for it. Let the world know you're awake. Let them see that you're still in control. I love making these videos for you. Your support means everything. Every like, every comment, every new subscriber fuels this mission to expose the truths they don't want you to know. So if this hit home, if you found value in this, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It takes just a second, but it helps more than you know. And if you want more insights like this, if you want to go deeper, sign up for my newsletter below. No fluff, no BS, just raw, unfiltered truth, direct to your inbox. But first, comment "not me" right now. Let's see how many of us refuse to be controlled.